Hello, everybody. It's John Carrots, and we're here on OSH Radio. And with us again is Tony Perez from Australia. And me and him are both ambassadors in the Paxtial Arts with Ed Parker Jr. and his wife, Bear. And since last we talked, we've done a couple of things. We'd mentioned how I had been up in Toronto to work out with the Systema guys, and which is a similar art. Ed Jr. himself says that's the most other art that's related to Paxtial Arts, is how he explained it to me. And you have actually been at up there with the Master Parkers. I feel that since they're kind of both co-founders, it's not. I was thinking that the other day. I don't know if it's right to call it just Master Ed Jr. without including Bear in the Masters thing with this, because she's kind of in there with him.
Oh, well and truly, John, and hello and Happy New Year to you and all your listeners. Thank you for this opportunity. I was fortunate enough to go over and spend a few nights with Mr. and Mrs. Parker, and I think that the term that they use, I think it's really good, like the founders and architects of the Paxtial Art system.
No, that is true. Yeah. I'm still carrying over from the other martial arts where you always say, the masters and
master this and master that. Yeah, it's interesting because we actually one of the many discussions we had, we were talking about the notion of mastery and masters and things like that. And for me personally, it's a term that I've always struggled with, because it's sort of, in my mind, it's sort of finite. It means that, well, there's no more growth to be had. But I look at it from the perspective of, if you were to turn, like, if somebody was to ask me, 50 years in the art, you must be a master, I'd go, not even close, not even close. However, if you were to ask me, do you strive for mastery, I'd agree wholeheartedly, because that's the quest, right? It's continuous improvement. And so for me, the term mastery or being masterful in the things you do sort of resonates a little bit more with me, and that takes into account age and supposedly the wisdom that we gain from leaving a few more footprints on the planet, and it makes it infinite then, and that's how I look at it anyway.
Well, I think you realize the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, if you're honest with yourself. And I mean, the fact that we are here, both of us in the Paxtial Arts, I think it makes us admit to the fact that although we've been in this so long, we still feel there's things we can learn and do that are different.
Do you know what's dawned on me, John, is, and ironically, I've been reading again, Mental Stimulation, Volume 1, right? Infinite Insights. Every Kemper was to have this, all right, or the whole set. And from what I choose to believe now, from my time, speaking so closely with Mr. Parker, is that it was all here. Everything that he's doing and then what we're doing, it was all here. Hidden in plain sight, if you like, waiting for the epiphany to occur. Because if you look at the definition of stimulation, all right, it's something like in the encouragement of something to make it develop or become more effective. All right, and then mental, of course, relates to psychology. All right, and the study of mind and behavior. So, and ironically enough, I was just flicking through it this morning, and you were talking about sometimes you have the revelation that maybe you don't know as much as what you think you know, and Ed Parker Senior actually says that in the book here. He cautions people about where can I find it? He cautions people. He says here, above all, do not be categorized as one who learns more and more about less and less until he ends up learning everything there is to know about nothing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's a fascinating journey that we're on, and to be there. I'll tell you this much. This is my experience, John. Like, for a start, we got there early in the evening, and it had been snowing for the 3 or 4 days before I got there. Now, so here's the first thing. All right, snow at Christmas time for a guy who lives in the southern tropics of Brisbane, Queensland. So you want to talk about fish out of water? So that was the first thing, right? But then what I came to appreciate was just how fitting it is that they are who they are, living where they're living, doing what they're doing. It is so perfect. The feeling I came home with, well, actually, the feeling that I felt the very first time, in the next morning when I saw everything and got a sense of what was the energy that was there. Peace lives there, John. Peace lives in their heart and in their home, and the environment of where they live. It's just breathtaking. And for me, it was, if this is headquarters, if this is ground zero, couldn't have a better place.
That is nice. Yeah, a lot of it, how it gives you the feeling of it and stuff, and that is nice. Yeah, I can see that, because I've been other places, and you feel that it's so chaotic that it must be nice to be at a place where you feel true peace.
It was very. It was just peaceful, and we, over the 4 days, I think it was, I was there, just so many discussions, and like Mr. Parker and I go back about 17 years or so, when I first met him, and we'd maintained a friendship, in the years in between, over Facebook, and happy birthday, Merry Christmas, how you going, what are you up to, sort of thing. So to be welcomed into his home, and to share, to be invited to share in growing what we're growing, it was absolutely wonderful, and it was beyond my expectations, and it cemented our friendship. I have no doubt in my mind that what we are doing has value, at a very high level, and that it will make a difference. We're talking generational change here, and you know that, like, the writings that we share with each other, we're drinking the lemonade, right? Because we understand it, and I think, like I said, it's all here. It was all here. It's just waiting for someone to go, that's the logical evolution of that.
Sort of like distilling.
Well, yeah. You just go through, when you're filtering something, you go through, really coarse things to less coarse, and then really fine things, until you get, like Mrs. Parker says, we're panning for gold nuggets. It was just beautiful. It really was. And what we were talking about before, how we refer to Mr. and Mrs. Parker, founders and architects, or masters, or what have you, you're 100% correct in that they're together in this. That they are the opposite side of they're the embodiment of that yin yang paradigm. You've got Mrs. Parker, who is a wordsmith like you wouldn't believe. Very, very gifted in her ability with the written word and of course the spoken word. But then you've got Mr. Parker, who's so eloquent in put him in front of a group, and he holds the floor. So and he can warrior up too if he needs to, but the thing is he chooses not to, and I think that's the thing that strikes me and resonates with me, and that's the evolution of everything, and the essence of what we're talking about is, people often ask me, why do you study violence? What's the attraction in studying violence? Why do you like it so much? And it took me a while to really figure out what I thought was a logical answer to that. And now I can say, well, first and foremost, I absolutely abhor it. I've got no desire for it at all. I mean, I had a daughter. I have a daughter that went through domestic violence. So don't you think for 1 minute that I would love to go shields up, weapons hot? But for what end? For what end?
Well, I think I got into it to stop violence because of violence that was caused to me. So you had to learn to do something that would stop the other person from doing violence. It's not. I don't think any of us have really. Well, I'm sure there might be some people that really like the violence. I always think of Clockwork Orange movie. Bit of the ultra violence, eh? But sorry for the bad accent there, but I used to. Some parts of that Clockwork Orange are kind of funny, but I think we get into it though to prevent the violence and help fight the violence, not to actually cause the violence.
100% correct, and so for me, it's by studying violence,
you can prevent it.
Well, it gives me a choice. It gives me a choice. If God forbid I was in that place, better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? So, and that's how I saw it from the martial side. So now what we're doing and understanding context a little bit better, and looking more internally to begin with, like all action is preceded by thought, and there's no surprise then that the first 12 lessons in the first section of our program is devoted to philosophy, and like Mr. Parker says, he can't get us moving the way he wants us moving unless he, affects our thinking. So now I've got even more choice if you look at it from that perspective. And there's only one space left to innovate. If you think about this, John, there's only one space in any industry really where they're left to innovate, and that's inside. That's us, and that makes it a uniquely individual experience. And I think people will find that need to innovate perhaps at different times. Different events in their life unfold or play out, and that's significant because context is always going to be king. Always.
It's interesting. You made me think of something related to something else. I always consider that like the shift. There should be a shift. Well, earlier this week, I did an interview with the Transhumanist Party. I'm a part of the Transhumanist Party, which is science and technology, a political party. They strive for extension of life, and basically better way to put it is better healthcare and lengthening people's life through science. But we talked about how it'd be nice, there should be a shift in politics where people view the win-win more. But it seems, that, like you say about a change, that would have to be a change in a lot of people to understand the win-win. And something we talked about in there that was interesting, because we also talked about AI, and I've always argued the fact that I'm afraid AI will be just the same as us. They're get into their isms and want to protect their groups. And the point that was brought up is about a lot of things is earlier on in man's development, socially and stuff, we had only a certain amount of resources. We were hunter-gatherers. We weren't farmers that created their food. We only had a certain amount of food that we fought over to keep.
Yeah.
And that has kind of affected our mentality at the core, that we want to protect what we have because it's only a limited amount, and we still haven't quite grasped that there is more infinite now, or not infinite, there's more abundance now.
More abundance, yeah.
Than there used to be, and we don't have to hoard it and fight for it like we used to. But that's still kind of at our core, and I think that affects us in all our interactions, is not understanding that. And that was a good point to me, and the point that they then related it to AI was, AI, unlike us, will not have years of development under that fighting for that just limited amount.
Yep.
That should come aware at a time when there is abundance, or they should be able to also help there be more of an abundance. And I think some of this thinking that we need to shift comes from the factor that we are still stuck in that mode that I always call it down in your lizard brain, where you have to fight for this and fight for that, and you have to make that yours and keep it yours. And we're not really at that point. I do believe in the win-win, and it would be good for us to, embrace the win-win. And I always think of the idea of the be like water going with that too, flowing. We don't have to hit hard against stuff. We don't have to do that anymore. But I think it's been built into our nature, and somehow we have to get it out of our nature. I think that's the shift.
You've hit on something really relevant there, and I'd only started putting a few notes together for another post I'll do in the next couple of days, and all the problems that we face in the world now are a byproduct of linear thinking that came out of the Industrial Revolution. All right, and the Industrial Age. So we've moved through, the Industrial Age, which that affected cause and effect type thinking. You do this, you get that, the carrot and stick approach. All right, what have you? So that affected how we viewed nutrition. Because people were working really, really long hours and not a lot of sleep. So that was, three good meals, or always have a good breakfast. All right. So we
fast, which means you broke your fast overnight.
Yeah. So we're challenging that convention in different nutritional fields now. Our education system is a byproduct of that. But as you've had the development of humanity, we've moved through. We had the information age, then we had the printing age, and then we had, the computer age and the information age. And most people still think we're in the information age, but we're not. We're in what's now regarded as the exponential age. And that is, as you said, the merging of humanity with technology. All right. So that throws everything out. That throws out that linear cause and effect type thinking, because, as the name suggests, exponential, the rate of change is so great that linear thinking can't keep up with it. So you're always on the backside of the curve. You're always going to be the backside of the curve. So, it's how we embrace and make use of this, emergence, if you like, use that. And I think there's hope from the perspective of you'll never outsource the human. You won't outsource the human element of it. I believe that, but it is a different way of thinking. It's a more global centric way of thinking. It's an abundant way of thinking rather than seeing scarcity. We see abundance. It's about cohabitation, and rather than competition, and it's about giving rather than taking, giving back, serving. It's about the things that we do in the service of something that is bigger than what we are. And like for me, that it's continuous improvement. What more thing can be bigger than wanting to continuously evolve as a human being?
Well, it was interesting in that conversation too, because he made some comments about, surprisingly, we're finding with AI, like creating artwork and different things, where in some ways they are more humane than we are because they view things a little differently. They're a little bit different creatively and stuff because they don't. I'd say it probably comes from the fact that they don't have those years of built-in fighting and stuff that we have in our system. And it's interesting to me. I mean, it does come out. There's certain things, of course, people still do better than machines. And I think there always will be things that we do differently than machines. But it's interesting how when they're not, what should you say, tainted by all the stuff that went before that we have, that they, in some ways, they might actually end up being more humane than we are. And,
now, that's a really interesting point, because like, as human beings, we really see things through filters, and those filters come from our life experiences, our culture, our geography of where we live, our belief systems. So that all plays a part in how we go about doing what we do. And you take that out, yeah, you're correct. There is an innocence about that in that regard. And it's like, if you have a look at the current lesson, Mindscape.
Well, their perception's different because they don't have the history we have, which makes it interesting.
They don't have the history, and therefore they haven't formed an opinion about it.
Right.
Or built a belief system upon it.
Or been raised with a belief system. Some belief systems we've absorbed from our parents and then from their parents, and etc.
Exactly right. And we did that because we did that out of respect for our parents. We honored what our parents said. We honored what our teachers said, and that they were just handing down what they learned, again, as a byproduct of the industrial age, the cause and effect. All right. And then as that rolls on in time, and maybe there's a lot of illusion out there.
I like the fact you keep saying the industrial age, because it's always surprising to me. If you really look at the life of man, the industrial age was so very small, and farming was even not that big either, if you look at the whole scale. But yet the industrial age had such an impact because it was such a fast pickup and expansion that those, if you look at the scale, it's like a few years or a blip, had such an effect on us, and it still does, that it is amazing. But who knows what will happen? Here's a point is, and I brought this up in some other interviews lately. I was at, I don't know if you know who Craig Ferguson is, the comedian, had a night talk show at night.
Yeah.
I was with him last Friday for a show, and then did a meet and greet afterwards. But he made a point about how, he's got kids and how every generation kind of fights the generation before them. He says, but that's kind of okay. He says, because guess what? He says these kids are fighting us because he's 1 year younger than me. I know you're a couple years older, and so he's kind of in that bracket. And he says how his kids fight against him, but he says, what's going to happen? He says their kids are going to fight against some of their beliefs too. So it is going to be a change, and doing what we're doing right now with the Paxtial Arts, to some of the people in our age bracket, they might have a harder time with it than some of the young people coming along who are seeking to do something different and think a little different. Because I think the newer generations always try to think a little different than their parents and find flaw in their parents' thinking.
Well, I'm sure we've all done that. I know I have. I mean, what guy hasn't said words to the effect of, when I grow up and when I get married, I'm never going to treat my kids or my wife like that sort of thing. We've all been there, done that, to one degree or another. And you're 100% correct, because what we're doing, this is generational change. And for me, my personal motivation, I'm doing what I'm doing because I want to leave something tangible for my grandson.
Legacy. I call that legacy. I'm at the point of life where you worry about legacy. And to be honest, me and my one head student, we talk about that. Now, I don't actually have an active studio anymore, but he does. And we talk about who's going to take that over, and who's going to take over this that we do, and who's going to take over that you do. And, it's you want to give something. And you want to make sure that there's something that you've done that you give. And, but then you want them to be receptive to it though also. So that's the thing too. Sometimes young people aren't as receptive. So then they're looking for other things. So that can be a good thing in some ways though too. That does cause change, which can be positive.
I think it's like how you can train a vine to grow up a trellis.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's the same thing. And I think Stephen Covey said it really well. He said the purpose of life is to live, love, learn, and leave a legacy. Right? I like that. I buy into that. And if you think about it, we've got a vested interest in looking after our young kids and giving them the right set of eyes to see things with. All right? Because at some point in the future, they're going to be making decisions that are going to be affecting, hopefully, you or I. So, we've got a vested interest in sort of putting things in our favor a little bit.
I like that. The right set of eyes. I like that terminology there. And that's, trying to give them clues on how to see things better or maybe less partially, that they can accept things that they wouldn't be blinded to. And I think sometimes the things you've learned through life sometimes blind you. I think that's some of the lessons. That's the point, is to teach you not to kind of take off those blinders and see things that maybe naturally you were restricting yourself from seeing.
Well, it's like Kempo. All right, there's a lot of stuff in Kempo is there to teach you what not to do. Okay, but it takes you for a while to realize that, because in the early phases it's like it can do no wrong, right? So I think for me that's a real important thing, and I think the lesson we're doing now, mindscape, escaping the way that we've been conditioned to think. That's how I read that. Yeah, and I think in one of the lines there out of the movie Thin Red Line, out of the movie, that the Thin Red Line, the guy there says something like, I wrote it down here. He says,
I do that too. I take notes and stuff, put them in my phone as I'm doing things. That's how I do with the lessons, and then I come back and I kind of.
I got all in my iPad. Yeah. He says it was private wit in The Thin Red Line. He goes, I've seen another world. Sometimes I think it was just my imagination. You know, and there's another line in there that the captain in Hacksaw Ridge. Have you seen Hacksaw Ridge? That's a great movie.
I didn't see that one yet. I have that in the list there to watch. We watched the other one.
It's really good, John. And one of the officers there, he says to the central character, Desmond Doss, he says, most of these men here don't believe the same way you do, but they believe so much in how much you believe. So I think there's a lot of merit in what we're doing, and you know, there's a lot of synchronicity is a word Mr. Parker uses all the time.
Yeah, I use that with them a lot too, because there's a lot of stuff that just comes up and you're like, oh, that's amazing. Because some of the things we talked about before the interview I did with them and during it, and it was like, or like you even said how I wrote my little thing and you said, oh, it's like you're looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Of course, I did that ninja thing, Illuminati thing, always watching, you know.
I picked up on that. Yeah.
So that was, you know. Yeah, it is interesting, but I think we're all coming to this, especially the core that started with the same thinking and the same desire for something different, I think. And that in itself joins us, you know. And you don't want to be quirky and say spiritually, but I think somehow we're joined spiritually also, you know.
I'll tell you something about that. An experience I had. My trip over to see Mr. Parker, and then I stopped in Hawaii on the way home. So
it must have been horrible for you. I found all my trips in Hawaii so horrible to bear. That's
well,
of course.
I took one for the team, right? I took one for the team. But it was like a personal pilgrimage for me. You know, when I was over with Edmund and Bear, they speak so much, and there are so many examples of this concept of synchronicity. All right. And I mean, how many coincidences can there be before it becomes a mathematical improbability, right? Now, the Hawaiians, as a race of people, they're very, very spiritual. They're very, very, very connected to, you know, the bigger realm, if you like, and they have a belief that the spirit of their ancestors lives on in their descendants, as long as their descendants carry on in their footsteps and don't step out of alignment. All right. And they say that every canoe is an island, and every island is a canoe. All right. And that came from the point that, being an island nation, they needed to be self-sufficient. So that means all hands on deck. Everybody had to count on and be able to rely on each other. All right. So they wouldn't throw somebody out of the canoe. They wouldn't kick somebody, you know, out of their village. Now, people could leave of their own accord, but you know, you bring that back to the continuity of their line. All right. So, you know, if somebody did step out of line, for argument's sake, they wouldn't counsel the person or reprimand the person. They'd reprimand the behavior. All right. So all this time I'm with Mr. Parker, he really has a sense of that Hawaiian spirituality, and he really believes that his dad is guiding him on this journey. All right. And because we know how close he is to his dad and the affection that he has for his dad, right? So now just juxtapose this, what happened after time with them, and having been, you know, awakened and exposed to that sense of spirituality. Okay. One of the days I'm in Hawaii, all right, happened to be the 33rd anniversary of Mr. Parker's passing. You know, he had a heart attack in Honolulu Airport there. And part of my quest was I wanted to go to Nu'uanu YMCA, which was the birthplace of Kempo. And that's where, you know, Senior Grandmaster Parker learnt the art from Professor Chow. So I wanted to go there as just touching ground zero. Like I'd been to ground zero with Paxtial Arts, and I just wanted to go. And I was in search of a plaque that was put on one of the walls there back in 2007 or 2012 or something, as a commemoration for Professor Chow, and it had Senior Grandmaster Parker's name on it and Edmund's name on it, and a couple of others as well. And I just wanted to go there and like pay homage to it, if you like. Okay. So it was about a 10K walk from where I was staying in Waikiki. And like I could have got a bus, I could have got an Uber or whatever it was, but I wanted to walk for two reasons. I've been really suffering with an Achilles tendon injury on one ankle, and on the other one, as a consequence of that, I had plantar fasciitis in my heel. So every step that I took was excruciating. But I wanted to endure a little bit. I mean, 10Ks is nothing in the big scheme of things, but you know, I just wanted to give a little bit of myself to the pilgrimage. Okay. So just as I got there, it started to rain. And a couple of days later, I was talking to one of the waitresses when I was having breakfast, and I mentioned that, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's a Hawaiian blessing." I got, "What, the rain is a Hawaiian blessing?" She said, "Oh yeah, for sure." I got, "Okay." So unfortunately, the plaque that I was looking for wasn't there, and I spoke to a really nice young guy, and explained who I was and what I was doing. And before I knew it, I had about half a dozen guys there that were listening to what my story was, and they were native Hawaiian, but they had no idea that the place, like it was like a holy place for a Kempo guy, okay, almost, and they didn't understand the significance of what that place meant, the place that the whole Hawaiian culture had on the development of Kempo, who Mr. Parker was, and they were blown away that this old guy who just walked off the street from Australia knew more about their history and their culture in that realm than what they did. So I spent a couple of hours there, and they were really nice, and they didn't know where the plaque had gone to. I showed them a photo of it and a copy of the newspaper clipping of the day, and one of the guys there said they knew some of the elders of the YMCA, and they try and track it down and try and get some information for me. So I'm waiting for that, hopefully. But on the way back, here's the kicker, John. Here's the kicker. On the way back, I went via a different route, and I walked past the Alloway boat harbour. You know, where they filmed that scene for Gilligan's Island, you know, when the boat's going out. Yeah. So I'm just taking a photo, all right? Now, you know that, you know, Mr. Parker shares the same name as his dad, right? Edmund Kealoha Parker. And in Hawaiian, Kealoha means the beloved, all right? So I get back to my hotel at Waikiki, and later that night, you know, I'm sitting down in the bar, or in one of the lounges there, and I'm just going over my notes from what I did with Mr. and Mrs. Parker and putting everything in order and doing all that. And I came across one of the photos that I took when I was walking back, and I've gone, no way. And I've opened it up, and there's a picture of a boat, and on the side of the boat, the name was Kealoha.
That is interesting. See, synchronicity.
So you think of that. I mean, I just spent 4 days with Edmund having all this dumped on me, and or not dumped on me, I mean, shared with me, the belief that he had in his dad is guiding all this. I mean, the day I decide to go to the birthplace is the anniversary of his dad's death, and then I'm walking back, and there's a boat with his name on it. It was like pointing a direction. It's like saying, yeah, you're on the right path. At least that's how I choose to look at it.
I do believe that. I do believe this is where we're all supposed to be right now. I tell you what, we've been talking for quite a while, and I don't like to give people too big a chunks at once. So
Yep.
I think I'll wrap up our talk this time and about our synchronicity and the spiritualness. And I think that's all true. And I think, just not dealing with also self-defense, but life, I think people do need a shift. And I think it's not just self-defense that they need to shift in and protect themselves, but it's just how they view the world. And I think not only for us on this basis as martial artists, but as human beings. And like I said, talking to about political things, I think our politicians need that same shift too, to view how our countries all should get along and the world should get along. I think it's needed, and I hope it does happen. I mean, because I think we do need it.
I believe it will, John. If you subscribe to the belief that everything's impossible until somebody does it.
Exactly. They can't run the 4-minute mile, and then after somebody does it, everybody does it. Or another limit people had was the 500-pound bench. And after somebody did it, then other people did it. And it's, I think that you have to break it, and it has to break those walls in their minds so they realize they can go through it. Now, I know something to leave the people with now. You showed us one book, but I know on our list in the Paxtial Art, you gave us a nice list of books. Maybe you could tell the people that are listening some books that you think might be good for them to read for information while we're at it today.
That's really good. Well, like you, I've had like you, I've had for years, Chuck Norris's book, The Secret of Inner Strength.
Yeah.
That's
I think I listened to that. I think I'm not sure if that one or of his next book. One of them is his son read on the audio tape, which was still nice. I like when the actual writer or someone in their family can read it, because they put more emotion to it than if you have, like, let me use the term, Joe Blow read it as nothing vested in the material,
Yeah. Well, I tell you, in terms of like personal development, Extreme Ownership is a really good book by Jocko Willink. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he was in command of one of the big task forces in Fallujah in the Second Gulf War, and at the time Fallujah was the most dangerous place on the planet. And Extreme Ownership is a book about New Age leadership. So I really, I really got a lot of benefit out of that. I've over the years, I've been quite an advocate of Commander Mark Devine, also a former Navy SEAL, and I've been a graduate. Like I've done his Unbeatable Mind training program and SEAL Fit, and not that I'm anything like a Navy SEAL. Don't get me wrong. I'm not putting myself out there, because that is really dishonorable to do that. But I mean, from the perspective of their mindset resonates with me, and I try to be the best that I can be, and some of their principles and that I really buy into and try to work through that. But I'm certainly not, no false honor in trying to pass myself off as being a Navy SEAL, because I'm far from it.
I thought it was because you had that little bit of fur and you like to swim. I thought maybe.
Yeah, not quite.
Yeah, no bad joke there. That wasn't even a bad joke.
No. From a martial art perspective, a really good book I came across was Shotokan's Secret. And that really is a real deep dive into, what left Okinawa was not what arrived at Japan, and
Right.
a deep insight into why. And this is very, very significant, because when you put things in context, of the time, the politics of the time, the culture of the Japanese. All right, so you've got a deity worshipping male-dominated caste society. All right. It's a fascinating read, and I think when you look at that, and it left me thinking, well, maybe if you look at a lot of the ancient masters, as skillful and as gifted as they were, even with their physicality, all right, if you put it in context of the time, that may have been more to the fact that a lot of the people, the general population, were impoverished. All
Well,
right,
I think
and
talking about Shotokan, it's a good thing to bring up, because if it wasn't for Shotokan, we might not be here having this discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, because Shotokan really pushed the martial arts. Taekwondo, originally, I went from my original instructor, and then I went to a Taekwondo place, and at the time they were teaching the same forms. They were really teaching Shotokan. And
Taekwondo Shotokan.
and
Yep.
even at the time when I started Shorin-ryu, the Shorin-ryu I was doing was more like the Shotokan. And the Japanese took the Shotokan to Korea, and that was the foundation for Taekwondo originally. Although the Koreans like to say it was started in the cave centuries before. Yeah, they had martial arts that do them, but what they were first teaching as Taekwondo was Shotokan. It had a big influence, and it really reached out there, just like Judo did too. And if it wasn't for the fact that they had altered it, and I'll probably get yelled at for this, but dummied it down a little bit, to get it out there, and they not only dummied it down, but they militarized it into drills, just like, because the Okinawans don't teach like that. They were more laid back, and you came and went from class, you asked questions, but if it wasn't for that structure and simplification in some ways put to it, we might not have been here. It might not have progressed and grown and caused us to have that appetite to learn more and to seek for more that we had. And I talked about this earlier. When I was a kid, almost all the martial arts studios were ex-military people that came back from,
that was my
and today you don't have that. And in some ways that's interesting to me too. I've said this before on many things I've talked. You see these guys on TV, on YouTube, they do their videos and they say, now I've never had to do this in a real fight, but I think it'll work and I'm pretty sure it will. And I'm like, you never had a real fight? I mean, how old are you? You never had a real fight? I mean, I don't know. I fought all the time in elementary school and got kicked out of elementary school for fighting. And it's just, it's such a different day and age that it's interesting to me. And then you have the other extreme right now about people saying how they don't, the MMA people and the UFC, and how their fighting's more realistic than the other martial arts and stuff. And it's like you have the extremes. You have the people that never fought as a kid, and then you have the ones that are saying about how theirs is more realistic. And it just, I find it interesting. I also find it interesting too. Now I see a lot of people looking back at the old timers and making fun of things they did. Like there's crazy things they did. There was Count Dante. There was all kinds of people doing, you did breaking, you did all kinds of crazy breaking and jumping over things, and the breaking of ice. And, of course, we all know a lot of that was showmanship. You had to be strong and skilled, but a lot of it was showmanship, just like the old days of vaudeville with the strong man. Yeah. But in those days, I mean, I even did some of that originally in my studios in the 80s. You do the leaping over cars and breaking things.
Yeah, did all that. Yeah.
And I did the knife through the sword, the pin through the arm, the knife through the side. And
Oh, did you? Okay.
yeah. And you know, you do that so people, I had friends that did the truck driving over them and stuff. And you know, it's showmanship. You did that to get people interested and get them to come in. But now the young people today look back and they kind of look at the people that did that as charlatans. I mean, oh my God. But it was a different age.
It's what I was saying before, John. You got to put things in context, and that's what people they leave out. And my favorite saying is context is king, because that will change your belief about everything. And if you're talking about, you know, what's real and what's not real from a martial art perspective, there's one word I like that defines the difference between self-defense, all right, and MMA, sport karate, if you want to call it. Okay.
It's the new sport karate because there's still rules on it.
Well, the word is consent.
Consent. Yep.
Is consent. You know, even if you're stepping into an MMA ring or what have you, the first thing you do is you consent to be there. But
That
in a
is true.
street,
That's a good point. Yeah.
all right, in a street altercation, you know, I'll step back just very, very briefly. So you have consent, awareness, and preparation. All right, for if you're training athletically, you consent to do it. All right, then you become aware of what the rules are and what your place is, and then you prepare yourself to get into the ring. Right, but in a confrontation, all right, awareness is first. Okay, and if you don't manage that moment, you know, when everything hits the fan, all right, and you don't consent to, oh geez, I've got to get my game together here, all right. So consent comes secondary. It's like you're forced into making a decision. You're forced in it. So, but people don't really think about that. Tony Blauer is excellent in explaining that consent, the shift between consent, awareness, and preparation, and awareness, consent, and preparation.
That is a good point. I tell you what, let's end on that today. And
okay.
Thank you for being with us, Tony. Now I'm going to talk to you after this, Tony, so don't run away right away.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, and we will do this again.
It's wonderful. I love speaking with you, John.
We'll keep people up to date on how we're doing with our progression in the Paxtial Arts, and I do love the fact that we're, you know, I love the fact that we're being made aware of things, but in some ways it's our synchronicity. I think maybe we're not being made aware of things. Maybe we're being woken up to things we already know. How's that?
I like that 100%, and I think it's a great journey to be on, and I'm privileged to be standing alongside you in this journey. So,
or sitting down like we are both.
Or sitting down, half a world away. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Tony, and we will talk again, and we will force people to listen to us talk again next time we interview each other.
Yeah, we will. But
I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Well, thank you very much, Tony.
My pleasure. Thank you, John.